Sound of a flatlining heart monitor beeps once, then silence. The room is filled with a sudden, deafening quiet. A person lies still. Doctors and nurses gather around the bedside. A clear and irreversible line has just been crossed. The heart has stopped beating. The brain, starved of oxygen, shows no signs of electrical activity. By every medical and scientific measure available to us in 2024, this individual has been pronounced clinically dead. The fight is over. The story has ended. For the grieving family, for the medical team, this is a moment of absolute finality. It is the definitive conclusion to a life lived, a curtain falling on consciousness itself. But what if they are wrong? What if this clinical endpoint, this measurable cessation of biological function, is not an ending at all? What if, in that precise moment the machines fall silent, the real journey has only just begun? This question has haunted humanity for millennia, whispered in ancient texts and debated in modern laboratories. We are taught to believe when the body ceases to function, the person is simply gone, their awareness extinguished like a flame. But what if that flame isn't extinguished? What if it's merely transferred, carried away to a place our instruments cannot follow, a realm beyond our comprehension? Science tells us consciousness is an emergent property of the brain, a complex symphony of neurons firing in intricate patterns. When the symphony stops, the music of the mind should stop with it. Yet from the edge of this supposed abyss, stories return, not just peaceful journeys toward a welcoming light. Those are common. A more disturbing category has also been documented, one that speaks of darkness, torment, and unimaginable suffering. These accounts force us to confront a terrifying thought. What if the end of life is not a gentle fading away, but a sudden and horrifying awakening into a reality we have dismissed as myth? These are the stories that demand our attention, pushing the boundaries of faith and reason, asking us to consider what truly lies beyond the veil of death. The doctors told my wife I was gone for 23 minutes. He might say, his eyes wide with a memory that will not fade. But they were wrong. I was somewhere else, and I saw things. Things the Bible warned us about for thousands of years. But they weren't metaphors, they were real. This is the essence of testimonies given by real people who believe they have been to hell and back. They speak with the raw, visceral detail of an eyewitness to a catastrophe. For most of his life, Bill Weiss was a successful real estate broker. He was living a comfortable life in California. He was a Christian, but not in a way that consumed his daily thoughts. That all changed in the early morning hours of November 23, 1998. Weiss describes going to bed as usual, only to be abruptly awakened around 3 o'clock in the morning. In a terrifying instant, he claims he was pulled from his physical body, not by choice, but with an irresistible force that dropped him into a place of utter horror. He found himself on the rough stone floor of a prison cell, a place that felt ancient and utterly devoid of hope. Weiss, still possessing his memories and sense of self, was gripped by a confusion that quickly gave way to primal fear. As his awareness adjusted to this horrifying new place, he became conscious of two other figures in the cell with him. But these were not human. Weiss describes them as enormous, reptilian creatures. They were embodiments of pure, concentrated evil, radiating a malice so intense it was a physical force. The most immediate sensation was the heat. He felt as if he should be instantly incinerated. Yet he wasn't. The fire, as he described it, had no ability to consume. Then there was the darkness. It was an absolute blackness, a suffocating and tangible void. The smell, he says, was the most foul and toxic odor imaginable. A putrid combination of sulfur and the sickeningly sweet smell of burning, decaying flesh. And finally, there was the sound. A constant, deafening cacophony of screams. It sounded to him like millions, perhaps billions of souls crying out in unison. Worse than any physical pain was the psychological torment. It was a state of complete and utter hopelessness. The realization that he would never see his wife again was an unbearable torture all on its own. He felt a soul-crushing exhaustion, a desperate need for a sleep that would never come. According to him, In hell, there is no rest. After what he says was 23 minutes, Wiese claims he was pulled from the cell and met by Jesus, who told him to share his story because hell is real. He found himself back on his living room floor, screaming in terror. And he's not alone in these claims. Mary Kay Baxter alleges that Jesus took her on a 40-night visionary tour of hell. She describes a place in the center of the earth, filled with the smell of decaying flesh and the cries of the tormented. She saw souls endlessly tortured by giant worms crawling through their skeletal remains. These testimonies paint a picture of an afterlife that is terrifyingly real to those who experience it. These accounts are deeply disturbing, and they challenge our modern understanding of life and death. If you find these questions compelling and want to explore more mysteries that sit at the edge of science and faith, take a moment to subscribe. We look into these topics every week. So, what do we make of these experiences? Science tells us that consciousness is a product of brain activity. When the heart stops and oxygen is cut off, the brain begins to shut down. So how can anyone have a clear, structured, and life-altering experience during that process? The scientific community has a few ideas. One is that these are hallucinations caused by a brain under extreme stress. A lack of oxygen or hypoxia can certainly cause vivid visions. Psychology offers another angle. The sheer trauma of a near-death event could trigger something like a hyper-realistic nightmare. Another leading hypothesis involves DMT, a powerful psychedelic molecule that some researchers believe the brain might release in a flood at the moment of death. While this is still a theory, it could potentially explain encounters with otherworldly beings and tunnels of light. For a long time, these explanations seemed sufficient to many. The visions were just the final chaotic firings of a dying brain. But is that the whole story? The issue is, these explanations don't seem to cover everything. A 2024 study at the University of Michigan discovered surges in brain activity, including gamma waves linked to consciousness in the brains of dying patients. This suggests a biological basis for highly structured, lucid experiences. Perhaps the most puzzling part of some near-death experiences is when they include verifiable information. There are anecdotal reports of people who were clinically dead later describing conversations or events from their resuscitation, details they couldn't possibly have seen or heard. It's important to state that these cases are rare and hard to prove definitively, but they raise a fascinating question. How can a hallucination gather real-world data? Then there's the consistency of the imagery in hellish experiences. Researchers have noted common features. The descriptions from people like Bill Wiese and Mary Kay Baxter sound unnervingly similar to biblical descriptions of hell. The Book of Revelation speaks of a fiery lake of burning sulfur, and in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus describes it as a place of unquenchable fire. The feelings of hopelessness and eternal torment echo these ancient warnings with stunning precision. This forces a difficult question. Are these individuals simply hallucinating based on cultural preconditioning, or are they modern-day eyewitnesses to a reality described thousands of years ago? So we find ourselves at a crossroads between skepticism and faith. On one hand, we have plausible scientific explanations that are becoming more sophisticated every year, suggesting these visions are a natural, if extraordinary, function of a dying brain. On the other hand, we have these powerful testimonies, experiences that are not only subjectively real, but that lead to profound, lasting life changes. Experiences that contain details that are difficult to explain and show remarkable consistency with ancient spiritual texts. Ultimately, science cannot definitively prove or disprove what happens after we die. The question of whether these experiences are proof of an afterlife remains a matter of interpretation. Are these stories the brain's final, elaborate light show before the darkness? Or are they a genuine warning, a glimpse into a reality that exists just beyond the limits of our scientific instruments? What do you believe? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, know that you are not alone. Thanks for watching.